reading has actually been pretty good this year, and I'm very impressed with the amount that I've got through. But what has been the best and the worst so far? We are only halfway through the year. What made it on top and what did not? Let's find out. Hello and welcome to the Christy Grace Scarlet Pen channel. I am an author, creativity chaser, and book lover. Today I am talking to you about my best and worst books so far of 2021 that I have read. Before I go into that video, I want to talk about my top. This is not what I planned for. This is like a multicolored shirt. There is all of the colors happening. This is so 90s reminiscent style, and I freaking love this top. Okay, now that that is out of the way, I am going to talk about my best and worst books of 2021. I'm going to recall the books that I have read thus far in 2021. Oh, this is the last one that I read, My Life as a Screaming Skydiver. It's a Wally McDougall book. If you don't know what these books are, you're missing out. They are so funny. Oh, some of the... Oh, I liked that one. Oh, I loved that series. But this is 2020 now. Script change. It is going to be the best and worst books that I've read in the last year, which includes the second half of 2020, because evidently I have not read that many books. Oh, I read the Reckoners series. Oh, I loved that. Oh, that's a non-fiction. July counts. July counts. So I will do some honourable mentions from the latter half of 2020. I have officially read and finished 11 so far this year. So I'm currently in the middle of reading Sherlock Holmes and the Needle's Eye. And it's essentially Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson find a time machine and go back to Bible times to solve mysteries that nobody asked for. So I read one of their little cases a day. And it's been really fun. It's been really nice. And some of it is really obscure. I'm currently reading that one at the same time as Throne of Glass. So far, I'm halfway, and so far it's mostly been little fantasy and a lot about assassins trying to beat each other out to be the champion. So I've been digging it so far, but they are sort of exploring a little bit more of the supernatural. But that's what I'm currently reading. Okay, so some honourable mentions from last year. 80/30 by Ted Dekker. Not only entertaining, but it is so earth-shattering, mind-blowing that it is my favourite book of all time. I read some really fun things last year. I actually read an autobiography by Debbie Reynolds, Unshakable, Unsinkable, because she was the unsinkable Molly Brown. In going through my Goodreads reviews, I found that I actually am not very... I don't waver very much from my general stars that I give. If I do mention a star review rating, just be aware of that. Alright, I have my least favourite too. So I read We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. The only reason I read it in the first place is because I heard about it on BookTube. I gave it 3 stars. It actually should have been given 2 stars by me. I did a bit more of an in-depth review in the I Spy in July video where I talked about the last 5 books I'd read. Most of the characters were awful, horrible, and I couldn't get behind any of them. They were all selfish, spoiled. The dynamics in the family were weird and awful, and I understand that a lot of families do have this really tense and troubling dynamic in reality, but I'm going to a book for an escape from those sorts of things. And even though I read a lot of crime where there's a lot of murder and horrible things happening, it frustrates me when every single character is awful. There is not a character that I could relate to or like, and that was hard because it means I can't latch onto a character that I enjoy. I think the writing style, from what I remember, was really confusing in the beginning, and I think that the general plot was an interesting idea, but it was just kind of, I don't know. I didn't vibe with this book at all. The other book which made it to the bottom of my list, The Knife of Never Letting Go, which was the first book in the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the world and the story. This one was sort of more about the world, another planet where for some reason there was something on this world which allowed everyone to hear and see the thoughts of only the men on the planet, and all of the women were killed in a mysterious war. But then a little boy who's about to become sort of a man in his community finds a girl and she's silent. You can't hear or see any of her thoughts, and that's very disconcerting, and everybody in the town is after her, so they go on the run. This book was actually made into a movie, Chaos Walking, which is why I read it in the first place. I loved the first person perspective. I loved the characters. I liked the story. My mind is very vivid and active imagination wise, and the idea that people can read your thoughts is not healthy for me, and so I stopped reading for that reason. So props to me for recognizing my limits, but sometimes it was difficult to follow, or the idea or the plot was a little bit flat some places. The top rated books! When you pick and choose the books that you read, it's not very often you find ones that you don't like. I actually did recently an unboxing video, which I'll put the link below if you wanted to see it, where I got a mystery box of like 38 books or something ridiculous, and it was just gonna be random stuff that I got, but because I didn't pick them out myself, I might come up with some ones I didn't like so much. Who knows? I had 2 5 stars so far in this first half of 2021, and one of them was the Hadley Academy for the Improbably Gifted. It's a YA fantasy. Normal teenagers who find out that, unbeknownst to the rest of the world, there are some people among them who are gifted and have these, you know, like superpowers essentially, but they aren't really aware of it, and when they are made to be aware of it, some of them are taken to this Hadley Academy where they're taught to use it to fight a secret evil that nobody in the world knows about either. And if they succeed, then, you know, woohoo, otherwise they potentially go back to their lives. This book was essentially about a guy who was told that he is gifted, but he can't actually access his gift yet, so he goes through the training process with the rest of his team to try and save the world from these evil, you know, creatures which can look human but actually are not, apparently. It's like this evil darkness situation going on. I really loved this book. Just because I am in my late 20s does not mean I can't enjoy, you know, stories about kids in their late teens. Like, don't judge me. It was a really well-paced book. There was enough adventure and excitement in there to hold my attention. The characters were fantastic. I feel like the resolutions were solid. They were really interesting. It was really great. It had me guessing. I had several ideas about where the ending was leading, but it did have me guessing myself and saying, which one of those ideas do I think is correct? All the way to the end. The other 5-star rated book and the other top rated in this in this first half of 2021 was My Life as a Screaming Skydiver by Bill Myers. It is the Wally McDougall series, and it is actually also for kids. I read Wally McDougall books when I was in like year 5. I was, you know, 11, 12. I read this book for nostalgia's sake, and I'm so glad that I got it. This book was phenomenal. I think it was funny. It was so easy to read and to follow. It wasn't very long because it is designed for kids, and so it wasn't very long. It wasn't overcomplicated, but the stories, all these stories follow Wally McDougall, an absolute klutz of a guy who always falls into these ridiculous scenarios that would never happen in real life. But they're so fun that you forget and you don't care. And so this one in particular, the skydiving one, is about Wally stumbling into like a spy adventure, sort of, except that he's not 007, he's 00 because, you know, he's a kid. It was so much fun. Oh, the breaks in the text, in the paragraphs, to give you the descriptive word of what is happening. Like, it's not just, you know, it's almost comic book like, where it's a break in the paragraph to go kaplonk, just so you can get in really big font or really small depending on what's happening. But it just gives you that extra layer of comedy, that extra layer of being engaged and immersed into this story, and you sort of understand poor Wally and the people around him. And I am such a clumsy person, so for me this was so fun to read. I'm like, I've done stuff like that, maybe not faster. Each story also follows a very, a good sort of moral lesson as well. So this one was taking responsibility, which I think, especially at the moment, is so relevant, but it gives this idea of taking responsibility in such a funny and nice way. It doesn't bash that idea into you. It's just so flows so well. And I think for kids, that's fantastic. This idea of coming to the end of the book and realizing about taking responsibility for your actions, even if it was a mistake, still taking responsibility and saying, I'm sorry, that was my fault, like that was a mistake, and taking responsibility is so great. But within these books, you also have Wally in the midst of these adventures when there's like downtime. He writes his own stories about superheroes, and I'd forgotten that. When I picked up this book, I totally had forgotten. I am in love with this book, and I, as a 28-year-old, will still read this. I don't care if it's designed for 11-year-olds. I can still enjoy it because it's so hysterical. I was laughing out loud. So many, like at least once a page, I was laughing out loud because it was so funny. Wally. Those were my top 2 rated so far in 2021. The few that I will give an honourable mention for, I wanted to mention, I did finish the Legend trilogy this year. Characters were phenomenal, the world was incredible, the writing was flawless. I loved that. I finished the Reckoner series by Brandon Sanderson. I loved the series, I loved the plot idea, the characters were great, where the characters went, the ending was fantastic. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my take on these books. And if you wanted to check out any of my other Goodreads reviews, you can in my Goodreads page, which I'm linking below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the adventures.